Hi, my name is Peng. I'm an entrepreneur, but actually I was an entrepreneur. I now spend time as a VC investing in other entrepreneurs, helping them build successful companies. I've done this in China. I've done some investments in Silicon Valley, and now I'm focused on Southeast Asia, and particularly in Singapore, and now I'm in Jakarta also. What I do look for are really high energy, resilient entrepreneurs that we think are going to build the next generation of companies coming out of Southeast Asia. So there are challenges scaling up companies in various different aspects and in different geographies. In Southeast Asia, I think one of the challenges is actually having enough coaches to help you through the scaling up process, because when you go from in the tens to the hundreds, and especially when you go from like 150, 200 to 300, 400, the nature of what you do is very different. And it is really useful to have someone who's done it before sitting next to you, helping you through this. And there are just not that many people who've done this in this part of the world. So it gets a little bit harder, and sometimes you have to learn on your own dime.
Yeah. So we are from Technol Asia. So Technol Asia is a media company in which we write about Asia tech news. So anything that's related to internet startups in Asia, we will cover them, right? So what we think of Endeavor event. So Endeavor, I think this event is good it brings together people from all industry. So we met people from selling coffee, people from banking, people from telco, people from not just from tech. So it's a good match of everyone who are able to collaborate and think of how they can work together. So that is a good fusion. So the networking is good, and I think the content will help a lot of entrepreneurs in the event. So that is what I think is very good for the ecosystem. Okay, I think it's already quite very good and good event in which you get all the entrepreneurs together, and there's even a session in which the mentors and the entrepreneurs can engage in depth. So that is something which is very good. So as for things to improve, I think I don't have much contribution for that because it's a very good event already. Yeah.
So for me, I think it's a good event that you guys bring in some speakers, which is very good. And then they share a lot of like the knowledge for all people and then the entrepreneurs to be able to scale up. And then I like the event. The networking session is super.
Yeah, I think the best part of the event is the attendees beside of the speakers. I mean, you can see like not just the guy that doing tech company, because that is the people that every day we met. Now we met Daniel Mananta. I don't know why a VJ of MTV is there, but I know he is an entrepreneur himself, which is good to know him also, right? We also meet people like from body shop, from other stuff. It's really enriched our perspective as people that are working very niche, only meeting startup people, only meeting the kid. It's a very fun event for us.
Hi, my name is Nikhil Arora. I'm an Endeavor entrepreneur from Jakarta. Today I was talking up at the Scale Up conference really around some of the major challenges of scaling up, and specifically about building an organization. I think a key point that I wanted to focus on is taking a company and the change in dynamics of when a company goes from 100 to 200 and to 500. And I think that's where my fundamental reason of why I enjoyed Endeavor was to be able to get the quality mentorship, to be able to help me understand what it takes to scale an organization to 500 and how to change my leadership style, how to change the approach to our whole entire team, and how to empower our middle managers. And this is where I've gained a lot of valuable insights from Sal Giambanco, who's my personal mentor. He's been a tremendous influence for me. So thank you, Endeavor, for being able to link us together. He's been a great person, and of course, thank you, Sal. Wish you were here. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Prashant Gokhan. I look at strategy and new business at Indosat, which is the second largest telecom company in Indonesia. I'm also a mentor with Endeavor, and I just gave a speech on a topic about how new companies, as in startup companies, can work with telecom companies and bring their products to market. So what startups don't really understand is that telcos have a huge customer base which they can use, take the help of, to get their apps and their services out in front of those 60 million customers, which I think is the biggest challenge new companies have. So they could offer a new offer for the telecom companies, and in return the telecom companies will promote them both through digital marketing as well as selling them in the physical points of presence, as in the retail stores. I talked about a few examples of how we have, as Indosat, successfully taken a few startups to market in terms of taking them from a sub-1,000 base to multi-million base through working together and launching one of our new brands with like a privilege club or a loyalty club, whereas customers come in, they get maybe an extra dessert when they order food, or they get $3 off when they order a taxi, and so on. So these are examples I talked about. I also spoke about the challenges the startups will face as they actually go and sign up with telcos and how they can be best prepared for it. So that was my speech. So again, the challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is getting your product in a fairly crowded market, in the sense that customers typically would only any one day look at 3 or 4 news things, to get your product in front of a large base. So as a startup, you want to have multi-million users. You want them to use your product every day or every week. So that's the challenge. So the opportunity is being the startup that actually goes there. So to work with partners, including telco companies, to actually get your app on the phone, to get your service out there if you're a non-digital product, to actually get your restaurant or your food service or whatever product out there in the market, so that all multi-million customers get to use it, get to know of it, and recommend the product to their friends. So that's the opportunity, if you can do it. If you can't do it, I guess you got a business.
My name is Chris Zook. I'm a partner and have for the last 20 years been a head of the strategy practice at Bain & Company. And I've also had the privilege of writing 5 business books with Harvard Business School Press on how companies find their next wave of profitable growth. And I talked about some of the, just now, to 300 Endeavor entrepreneurs, of which I felt a great privilege to be here speaking. Endeavor, I think, is going to be one of the most important organizations in the world, because it addresses the issue of, ultimately, of creating good jobs and youth unemployment in the developing world, which is, I think, is becoming one of the most important issues facing us worldwide. So what I directed my talk to is really 3 main topics. One, I spoke about some of the background data that we observe in the world where we find sustained profitable growth is becoming more fleeting. The competitive advantage is shorter to maintain than it ever has been, and only about 1 in 10 companies achieve even a modest level of sustained 10-year profitable growth. Second, though, when we look at why so many companies fail to achieve their objectives that they target in sustaining profitable growth, what we find is that nearly 9 in 10 now say their main issues are internal. And they're not that their strategy is totally wrong, nor that external factors occurred that they couldn't do anything about, such as a collapsing market or government regulations. They actually say that very often the issues were controllable. And so companies that seem to have everything and fall short, we find are more often now cases of corporate suicide than of competitive homicide. So what I talked about are 2 angles to attempt to increase the odds of achieving sustained and profitable growth in your company. One is to really focus on, for young companies, and be very self-conscious of maintaining what we call the founder's mentality. The founder's mentality is a measure of the energy and the focus and the power and enthusiasm that fuels a young company when it basically has nothing but an idea, a founder, and the founder's mentality. And then over time, it may grow to scale. But as a young company, going often against competitors that are much larger, the founder's mentality and the inner energy that it fuels has to be one of the most important things. And at Bain, we have defined the founder's mentality in terms of 3 elements, and we've proven that founder-led companies are growing and are more profitable at a faster rate than we've ever seen in the world relative to other businesses that might be slower moving. So the 3 elements of the founder's mentality we talked about are: 1, having a sense of what we call insurgency or higher purpose and specialness that really everyone in the company understands. And this can be a huge advantage for a young company in a world where only 17% of people working in large companies now say they have any idea what the strategy or the main priorities and purpose of the business really is and what makes it special. Whereas for most founder-led companies, people do know what it makes it special, and that's a huge strength. And it causes people to be able to do amazing things and defeat much larger, more well-armed competitors. The second element of the founder's mentality is a love of the product and a love and obsession with the details of the front line. You know, for example, the great hotel chains were started by people who still, even in their 90s, like Mr. Oberoi, at the Oberoi Hotel, walks around and will look at the details and still has a love of the detail. Whereas very often you find companies grow, turn into bureaucracies, and lose that. When you lose the heroes being people at the front line and a love of the detail of the customer, you've really lost something. And that's an advantage in a founder company, where often the founder is the first salesperson, sleeps and turns the lights on off at night in their store. And so that's the second element of it, obsession with the frontline detail. And the third is what we call the owner's mentality. A founder-led company very often makes fast decisions, longer-term decisions for the overall health, and is willing to take total responsibility for the business. Whereas as companies become larger, that becomes balkanized, and companies turn into bureaucracies where they're much more political and less focused on pure objectives. The second thing I talked about is how when you look at your strategy, it's much more powerful to have a simple strategy built around a very few differentiated skills, like the Nike brand and ability to deal with athletes and design shoes for performance, that you reapply over and over and over again, than it is to do a lot of different things. And so I talked about what we call the power of repeatable models, and how we found that nearly 80% of the companies that had sustained and profitable growth for a long time were companies like Olam or Axiata or Nike, or even big companies like IKEA around the world, where you really can just look at it right away and see what makes the business unique and what makes it repeatable. And so those are the 2 elements. The founder's mentality and the repeatable models are both critical, we think, to strength of the internal game and the external game. And often you can corrode slowly internally if you lose the founder's mentality. And it's one of the great gifts of founder companies that they have that. And very often people don't really appreciate it until it's gone. And so it's just urging people in the room to keep things simple and to constantly think about those aspects of the founder's mentality. Thank you.
Yeah, Endeavor came timely to Indonesia 2 years ago. We are really, it's probably second largest, most democratic country in the world with 240 million people. With all the challenges of infrastructure, because we are a whole bunch of archipelago, we're not one whole land of like America land, but this is all little islands. And yet, with digital, with telecommunications, with deregulation, decentralization of the government, the whole Indonesia is bound to take off. And so the entrepreneurship spirit is on the rise from a few years ago. But it's on the rise as it's starting. So what we need is to scale up. And that's when Endeavor came 2 years ago. And it has really been playing a key role in building this ecosystem of entrepreneurship of the next level. And I'm proud to see that of the 13 endeavors, none of them has dropped in the 3 years we are of existence. I have seen other countries dropping within that 3 years. So we have been recruiting great entrepreneurs, and we have also given mentorship, knowledge, power to them. For entrepreneurs is really good. I mean, we're talking about growth rate of above 50%. I know some of them above 1,000%, not a few of them, very. But that is maybe the typical of Indonesia entrepreneurs. As they are creative, they are ready to take off, and with entering the Endeavor ecosystem is just make them ripe, really ready to take off. And they can come from many different areas, whether that's in the high-tech, game, payment system, that's still in the high-tech frontier, but also I'm seeing restaurants, real estate, fashion, media. So Indonesia, such a big country, we have tons of opportunities, and Endeavor is really enabler for these startups, for these young companies to be at the next level. It's my hope is that, imagine Indonesia is the size of America. We have major cities. Right now Endeavor is in Jakarta, but then we have Surabaya, we have Medan, we have Semarang, we have Jogja, we have Bali, we have Lombok, we have in Sulawesi, we have Makassar, we have Manado. If we start with Jakarta in Indonesia, my hope is to create this grid of network of an entrepreneur ecosystem for the whole Indonesia. And as we are entering AFTA, then we are also entering the grid of ASEAN, of the entrepreneurs from ASEAN, and creating this ecosystem for them, for the small and medium enterprises to really play with the major enterprises in the region to be at the same playing field.